touched about just different interests and ways to ground yourself. How do you handle the diversity in your crews, whether it's, race, gender, ethnicity, just culture, if they're from different countries, even just interacting with, folks that you're not familiar with within that country? Like, how do you make sure everyone gets the job done that they came to get done, but grows as much as they can grow as a person?
I think I think we find more in common than more that's different in those moments because they're so intense that, like we were saying earlier, we want everybody to, and we, but them also, everybody wants the best for everybody. Um, so I think we don't look at our differences so much. We look at what unites us in that moment. And so I suppose, some compromises that individuals need to make, that it's not going to be all the comforts you're used to or the conditions that you would want to. But you need to adapt to what the situation demands. Yeah. So that's what I'll say, I think.
Yeah. That's beautiful, though, that we're all more similar than different when it gets down to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I would just add to that the diversity of the teams is so important in our most successful expeditions and most, I think most enriching, I would say, have had substantial female leadership in them. This has been from former graduate students. We've had the Bolivian Cholitas Escaladoras. These are Aymara women climbers that I've worked with in Bolivia that joined one of our expeditions in Peru with National Geographic. They climb in their traditional attire. This includes Dawa Yangzum Sherpa, who's the first internationally certified high mountain guide, female high mountain guide of all of Asia. Was part of our teams in 2019, 2022, and 2023 in Everest. And that, in my experience, has enriched so much of the team and contributed to our successes. And of course, there's the diversity of culture. All of our teams are international. In not just like U.S. and Peru or Nepal, but I've got colleagues that joined from the UK. We have team members from across Latin America on these expeditions, and then of course there's the the local Sherpa or indigenous Aymara Quechua that we work with, and that are intimately familiar with those areas. And so we don't always. Language can be a barrier at times, and that's where I think for me, spending as much time as I have in Bolivia and Peru, I do speak Spanish fluently, and then speak some of the Aymara indigenous language as well, and a little bit of Quechua. But just one example I'll share. There's graupel is a type of snowflake that we get commonly in mountains, and
could you explain what a graupel is?
Yeah, graupel is just a snowflake completely encased in rime ice and super cold liquid water that freezes on the pellet. Well, this turns out it's very common in Peru, and in Bolivia, and in the Himalaya. But there's the Quechua language even has its own word for this. It's called pati. And so whenever this happens frequently when we're out in the field, it'll start graupeling. And there's this kind of shared fascination and appreciation for it, and we all kind of look at one another and start smiling and saying "pati, pati, pati." That's the name for graupel, because the teams there know that's really my favorite precipitation type, and so that's kind of an interesting cross-cultural bridge that comes in there as well. But the diverse teams are so important, and just making sure people come back safely, making sure we meet the objectives of the expedition, and just in all of those aspects is really critical. Those are all critical.
I'll add to this because that's something students ask a lot. Because you mentioned women in those field expeditions, they ask me if I approach things differently, and I never make a big point that this trip is led by a female or something like that. But I'll say, I think that there is a perspective that field work is kind of macho, like you have to climb to 20,000 feet and carry these heavy packs and do all these really like labor intensive physical things. And I mean, part of this is true, of course. I don't want to belittle the intensive physical aspect of the work. But I think that seeing a female leader in those expeditions opens the doors and the minds to many people that would not come otherwise, because they would think, oh, it's just a bunch of boys that are going to try to race to the top, right? And roll rocks downhill, because we know they do that. But yeah, right? So I think that having females on the team and leading teams makes the whole endeavor more approachable, not just for women, I think just for a lot of underrepresented people in general who will see, oh yeah, well, she'll probably understand this, or what if I have my period, right? So all these things that suddenly those walls are gone, and it helps